This video has been a long time in the making. After listening to their discography, I wanted to make a video about Ajikon, but with any band you wholeheartedly love, tackling such a huge task can be hard to do right. My first idea was a simple worst to best. The more and more I would listen to each album, the harder it would be to rank. What is the criteria that puts one over the other? One album could be a good package but offer little atmosphere. One album can have 4 complete bangers, but every other song is forgettable. My second idea was discussing the band's history. This would take a lot more work, but be a more enjoyable video to watch. While writing the script, I realized that I wanted to prioritize my personal experience over the objective analysis of the band's work. This video is what I came up with. Before I go on to talk about every other album, I'm going to give a brief introduction to the band.
Hello everyone, welcome to Entertainment Nippon. We are Asian Kung Fu Generation.
Asian Kung Fu Generation, also shortened to Ajikon, is a Japanese rock band that formed in 1996. The band started off with members Masafumi Goto, Takahiro Yamada, and Kensuke Kita, who met each other in university. To complete the band, Ijichi Kiyoshi joined as their drummer, creating an amazing team that has been playing together for over 2 decades. Their career started the way most bands do, performing at their own university and multiple small venues across Yokohama. With the help of another musician named Caramel Man, who I can barely find any other information on, they created their first EP. With most of the playlist being in English, it had a difficult time getting recognized by a wider audience. This led the band to bring more focus on Japanese lyrics. With years of practice and a lackluster EP, what direction will Ajikon go with their music? The answer is up. In 2002, Hokai Amplifier was released. This was Ajikon's first EP under a major label. The EP was a strong start, topping the Highline Records chart for 2 weeks straight. The band's hard rock feel was almost anthemic. Lead singer Masafumi Goto's iconic voice carries a sense of passion in these songs. The control and range over his voice stands out, and coupled with its simple production and dirty electric guitars, the extended playlist urges new fans to hear them live. The first song on the EP, Haruka Kanata, was also used as the second opening song of Naruto. Their popularity reached new heights, moving to a new record label and hosting the first Nanomugen Festival. With this kind of jumpstart, the band prepared to make their first studio album. Connected to You 5M was released in November 2003. The album consisted of 12 tracks spanning 50 minutes in total. 2 songs on the album, Piece of the Future and A Flower Named You, were both notable singles with accompanying music videos. The album sold over 250,000 copies and set a benchmark for future albums, having Yusuke Nakamura provide stunning and distinct artwork for all their album covers. Ajikon's first full-length album stands the test of time, but most of you aren't looking for a quick rundown. You're looking for a critique by an avid fan. Connected to You 5M is a well-balanced debut that falls short from its lack of a distinct sound. It was a wise decision to play it safe. However, putting their future records into consideration, this album feels drab and dull in its instrumentation. I feel like most of these tracks are carried by the lead singer's performances, rather than any layered guitar melodies. Don't get me wrong, I love Understand and After Images of Summer enough to scream its lyrics while driving down the freeway, but so much of the album's music sounds so bland? No Name is a prime example of a song that sounds like it's trying so hard to be an emotional end to an album, while just being duller than ever. It seems that the bulk of Connected to You 5M is lacking in atmosphere, but one song stands above the rest and awakens the heart of this band. A Flower Named You is my favorite track in this album. It has some problems in repetition and length, coming in at almost 6 minutes, but the picture it paints is nothing short of inspiring. The lyrics urge the listener to never forget the flower that is the relationships you form with others. The melodies still carry this aggressive rock tone, but complement the song and keep its energy up. The music video might be a bit odd in its storytelling, but I still find it charming. My favorite part of this song is towards the end when the lead singer Goto adds new, emotional melodies after the chorus has been sung. A Flower Named You plays to the strengths of this band and leaves you wanting more. Connected to You 5M was the first album of this band I listened to front to back. I remember listening to it while playing video games a couple years ago, keeping me company and being the only Ajikon I knew at the time. This album holds a place in my heart as a smooth transition from a random listener to an up-and-coming fan, but what new adventures await in their second album? Well, let's find out. Solfa was released in 2004, and maybe, for a moment, the world stood still. This is Asian Kung Fu Generation's magnum opus. This was Ajikon telling us that they were just getting started. Through their second album, they showed us that they could break Japanese rock into the mainstream and turn a hit single into a proper anthem. The spotlight was shining, having the album top Oricon charts for 2 weeks straight and sell over 500,000 copies in less than a month. The song Rewrite even became the opening song of Full Metal Alchemist. Not only fans, but critics agree that this was a big step in the right direction. This album took more creative liberties, with more members pitching in ideas during the songwriting process. The album manifests a distinct sound that draws the listener in. It's no doubt that Solfa is the most important album they have ever released. Important enough to re-record it 12 years later, but is it really the sonically complex juggernaut Jonathan McNamara paints it to be? Well, that's a tough question to answer. Some of Solfa is genuinely amazing. The monotony of their first album is all but forgotten as soon as you hear the opening melody of the intro song Shindokaku. I refer to Solfa as Ajikan's Red Album, red being a color that captures the energy and fighting spirit that some of the songs have. The second song, Rewrite, is probably their most recognizable song, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Rewrite is an anthem. When Masafumi Goto screams the chorus, you scream the chorus, even though your voice will immediately give out. Speaking of the album's sonic complexity, Solfa breathes life into the bridge of their song. The drowned-out section of Rewrite is a great way to slow the pace of a song before the last chorus gets you as pumped as the guy in the crowd that throws the water bottle. In the song Siren, the bridge consists of 2 different sets of lyrics being sung over each other. Yeah. It's these little things that make me appreciate the complexity of the bridges in other songs on different albums. Solfa is not all sunshine and rainbows, however. A good chunk of this album is really bland, but who knows, it might be your thing. But honestly, it's a complete drag. Last Scene is just so lifeless. Oh, and have you heard Yoru no Muko? The chorus of the song is just a verse melody, but in a higher octave. There is such a dichotomy in this album that it baffles me how no one has mentioned this in their reviews. Look, okay, I don't want to be this harsh. This album is the Asian Kung Fu generation that so many people love. This is the album that will forever be Asian Kung Fu generation's pride and joy, but to me, this is the best example of how a few bad apples can ruin an entire pie. Between 2004 and 2005, the band released DVDs documenting their tours and going behind the scenes of their music videos. Ajikan also held their annual Nanomugen Festival and showed up to numerous other festivals. During the winter season crossing 2005 and 2006, songs Blue Train and World Apart would be released, being a sneak peek for the album to come in March of that year. Fan Club was released in March 2006 and did just as well as you would expect. It held its place on Oricon charts and sold out its upcoming concerts. This album was nothing out of the ordinary for the band, just a refinement of its previous album. Continuing with the color analogies, Fan Club is the definitive blue album, being a cold and darker feeling album than its energetic counterpart. The vocals are harsh, especially during the chorus of World Apart, and the instrumentation just feels heavier. Fan Club is the album it set itself up to be, an album carrying the torch of the band's pre-established sound, but going through the weeds and seeing how the album evolves that sound is what I'm here for. Fan Club and Solfa are 2 peas in a pod, so a good amount of the latter's praises carry over. The dynamic nature of songs like Waltz and Codebook and Blackout, coupled with the darker tone in songs like Butterfly, mesh together to create such a wonderfully dreary mood. The album is the shadow of Solfa, being less energetic but in some key areas much more impactful. It's kind of hard to explain. Senseless, the 9th song on the album, is the summation of everything I love about this band. The song just sounds and plays like a well-oiled machine. Each guitarist adding to the harmony as the verse repeats itself is sublime. The way that each part of the song is distinct makes it a banger from start to finish. The song never has a dull moment. There is a lot to love about the songs that are displayed on your screen right now. If I have any complaints, songs like Sakura So, Rabbit in Backyard, and the closing song Tightrope are just a bit too stale and not nearly as interesting as the songs they live between. Another nitpick I have is that the microphone they used while recording these songs seems weirdly stiff. Like, the vocals sound filtered in a way that doesn't capture as much warmth as I would like. Even with these blemishes, however, most fans would agree that this album is a cornerstone and a frequent top 3 when talking about the band's entire discography. Before we move on to the next album, I want to take time to suggest some videos that can help on your Ajikan journey. Firstly, my channel has a playlist of songs that I recommend called the Asian Kung Fu Generation Collection. These are the songs that I listen to most, and if you don't want to go in album order, or just don't know where to start, feel free to shuffle the playlist and maybe you'll find an album you really like. There are also some high-quality videos of some of their concerts. The Rock in Japan 2011 set isn't very long and has live versions of A Flower Named You, Rewrite, and songs from their Magic Disc album I have yet to discuss. The Space Shower Live 2018 set is almost an hour long and covers their more recent musical style in a more intimate venue. The release of the compilation album Feedback File in October 2006 was the last major release before the band prepared for their next album. Through 2007, the band held off on their public appearances and didn't hold their Nanomugen festival. In March 2008, the band released World World World, my favorite Asian Kung Fu Generation album. If someone asked me to play an album front to back without skipping a song, this would be second place, and that's high praise considering that this album has 13 songs compared to the 6-song album in first place. Yes, I admit that this album isn't nearly as ambitious as Solfa and Fan Club, but I wouldn't be lying if I said this album isn't consistent. Let me walk you through it. The intro track World 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 is immediately inviting and warm, as it leads to the song After Dark, which I admit isn't as good as Rewrite, but not every song can be as good as Rewrite, okay? Then we move into To You the Departing, which isn't that interesting, but then the song transitions perfectly into the next song, Nyotani. Night Diving does the thing I love when two different lyrics are being sung at the same time. Planet, Rock and Roll Morning Light Falls on You, New World, they're just so good. Can you tell that I like this album because what I'm about to say next isn't as flattering? This album is the definitive yellow album, completing the primary color trifecta, but their attempt at this warm and easily digestible sound just isn't as compelling to me as the sounds in other albums. Alexei Eremenko describes Ajikan as being scared of their own potential in their all-music review of the album, and I agree with the sentiment. Ajikan can put their best foot first, but I'm not looking for another consistent stride. I'm looking for a leap of faith. In June of the same year, the mini-album Into an Unseen Tomorrow was released. Think of this mini-album as the condensed and refined version of World World World. The songs are varied and interesting, even experimenting a little with the tail end of the song Deep Breath. Before the year ended, Ajikan released Surf Bungaku Kamakura, the second full-length album of 2008. The surf album, as I like to call it, peaked at second place on both Oricon charts and Billboard Japan. The song Fujisawa Loser was also well received, being top 10 on most charts and getting its own music video. Even with its relatively good reception, the surf album is Ajikan's weakest link. Instead of taking the strengths of their previous albums and evolving the band's sonic capabilities, they create a sluggish, uninspired album that sounds so bland and generic that it could have been made by another band. The song Inumuragasaki Jane is pretty fun, but one good song cannot save this album from being despised by a fan such as myself. In 2009, the band released more DVDs and performed at both Rock in Japan Festival and Sweet Love Shower Festival. Throughout the year, 3 songs that would appear in their 2010 album would be released. Certain songs were released on their own, and 2 others were attached to the anime film Tatami Galaxy and the Japanese live-action film Solanin. In April 2010, lead singer Masafumi Goto would also announce the release date of their next studio album, Magic Disc. Magic Disc was released in June 2010 and surprised many with its expanded arsenal. James Hadfield of the Japan Times described it as the most adventurous thing they've attempted to date. The sounds of trumpets, bongos, and guitars being played in reverse are bold choices that the band has attempted to work into their pre-established rock instrumentation. The track Love Song of New Century is pretty out there but feels right at home with Goto's vocals. Last Dance with Sadness experiments with its percussion and feels fresher than ever, and the final song Solanin is a great end to the album. Magic Disc is a new and innovative direction for the band, but the level of ambition doesn't quite reach the level of quality found in the band's previous records. Moving forward to September 2012, Ajikan released Landmark, their 7th studio album. Landmark is the most pop music sounding the band has ever been. It isn't very focused and it isn't very challenging, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't catchy. Songs like Clicking My Heels to Love and Sore Dewa Mata Ashita are widely accessible in its structure and instrumentation. Hearing Masafumi Goto sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, baby is so weird but strangely enjoyable. Seeing my favorite rock band make songs like this is so bizarre and entertaining at the same time. To give credit where credit is due though, the bridge and bicycle race will never not be impressive. I know someone hates this album, and it's not great by any stretch, but hey, it's charming. Between the release of Landmark and their upcoming 8th studio album, the band went on their first European tour in 2013. In early 2014, the compilation album Feedback File 2 was released and featured the song Rolling Stone, which has a clever music video. During this period of the band's career, the band seemed to settle into their role as a famous band. I have no insight into their songwriting or personal lives, but it feels like the band's attitude on writing and playing music has changed after years under the spotlight. The band stopped asking, what would Asian Kung Fu Generation do next, but rather realized that they can do as they pleased because they are Asian Kung Fu Generation. During my research, I stumbled across a documentary about the band's time spent recording their 2015 album. Goto, Yamada, Kita, and Ijichi recorded Wonder Future at Studio 606 in Northridge, California, and seeing my favorite band stumble their way through SoCal and talking about the food that they ate made me realize that they don't stick out as a group of super famous musicians. If I saw them walk past me at Santa Monica Pier, I would freak out. Wonder Future was released in May 2015, and as you can see, something is definitely different this time around. The colorful and whimsically illustrated album covers of the past are now replaced by gray text on a white background. The only things you need to know is that this album is called Wonder Future, and that Asian Kung Fu Generation is the band that created it. Wonder Future was recorded at Studio 606, the recording studio of Foo Fighters, and the influence can't be denied. The title track Easter shows off the grunge and alternative rock roots present throughout the album without sacrificing Aji-Khan's distinct sound and vocal flourishes. The instrumentation isn't as complex as the band's earlier works, but if you are looking for that American rock feel, this might be your thing. The age in Goto's voice starts to show, and that is something that I've grown to absolutely love. It's a bit more textured on the low end and a bit softer on the high end instead of the yell singing present in Solfa and Fan Club. The album doesn't stand out the way Magic Disc and Landmark do, but it's a change of pace the band absolutely needed. In 2016, Aji-Khan re-recorded their second studio album Solfa. If you are interested in seeing how much a band can change in 12 years, this is the best opportunity you will get. The changes in vocals and instrumentation are very apparent. 2016's rewrite has a longer bridge section and a new music video. 2016's Siren no longer layers the vocals and instead sings them one after the other. The biggest difference between the two albums, however, was the song Ray Ray. This song is almost 2 minutes longer and adds completely new guitar melodies to the beginning of the song. Ray Ray 2016 is also the opening of the anime Erased, which is the whole reason I became interested in the band years ago. Hometown was released in December 2018. Weirdly enough, Weezer's lead singer Rivers Cuomo is credited as co-writing a couple songs on the album. Hometown fully capitalizes on Goto's voice, with songs that are more playful and inviting than Wonder Future's lineup. The album has a lot of tracks that go well with an acoustic guitar rather than an electric. I found myself gravitating to songs like Clockwork, UCLA, and especially Boys and Girls more and more, finding this album to be a great balance of relaxing and fun to sing. If you are looking for that heart-thumping and energetic sound, Walk in the Wildland is the closest you will find on this album. Hometown isn't trying to be anything more than an album that feels like home, and that's all I could ask for.
Right. Yeah, because I remember when I was in school, I watched a load of anime, and people would ask me the question of, what are the music you listen to? Who are your favorite artists? And I go through like my iPod or something, and it's just all fucking anime openings.
Pass me the aux.
And I'm just like, there's this really like underground Japanese band called like Asian Kung Fu Generation. You probably haven't heard of them.
I never would have thought that a 2000s alternative rock band from Yokohama would become my favorite band. It gets difficult to recommend this band to others due to the language barrier, but that never stopped me from wholeheartedly loving their music. They are the reason I bought an electric guitar in the first place. It's surprising to think that listening to the opening of Erased led to a video that took me 10 months to complete. I want this video to do the band justice for both newcomers and fans who just want to see what I have to say about them. So thank you for watching, and a huge thank you to Asian Kung Fu Generation for the unforgettable journey.